say you wanna watch a drama. You say you wanna watch a comedy. Well, you can watch it with your mama, or you can watch it with your daddy.
You'll even sit and watch it with your middle schooler, so you can come and talk around a water cooler. We're watching all day and all night.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa.
Couch potatoes unite.
Whoa, whoa. Couch potatoes unite.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the podcast entitled Couch Potatoes Unite! Which is based on a blog of the same name because we also enjoy cloning ourselves to be able to have our cake and eat it too. Doesn't everyone? You'll find out what that means in a moment. My name is Kylie and I love TV. If you feel the same, keep listening and or checking out our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, as you're bound to find some common ground or something you like. For Couch Potatoes Unite, we're all about the wonders and unique long-form storytelling of the small screen. CPU, ! Hopes you've been following releases of brand new episodes of the podcast on Wednesdays, as well as new blog entries on some Tuesdays, and as always we have several more new episodes on the way. Because the panelists and I live lives behind our podcast, the episodes are published once per week. Subscribe to the blog or the podcast via Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Stitcher Radio, via Google Play, and now on Spotify to stay on top of brand new episodes. Episodes already published discuss a variety of shows around the water cooler, including, but not limited to, Fuller House, Jane the Virgin, Supernatural, Orange is the New Black, Riverdale, Gotham, the Marvel shows on Netflix, Stranger Things, and the Arrowverse on the CW. Plus, new episodes are in the works, including revisits for Game of Thrones, The Crown, American Horror Story, Grace and Frankie, The Good Place, Altered Carbon, Doctor Who, Schitt's Creek, Westworld, and the Star Trek 50 Plus series will talk Season 2 of The Next Generation. We'll be launching new panels covering Charmed, Outlander, the Breaking Bad universe, This Is Us, and the Orville. And because we look back at shows now past, we'll put out some musical stops for our crazy ex-girlfriend. We'll revisit one of the all-time and most-watched classic sitcoms, MASH. We'll consider the moral implications and quick cancellation of Dollhouse, and we'll travel through time and experience all sorts of identities with Quantum Leap. By the way, did you know that CPU also from time to time goes live? We've been live from bunkers, comedy shows, Comic-Cons, game stores, and really from a lot of places in the multiverse. Plus, we're planning more live appearances and other cool stuff, including in these quarantine times. So make sure you like or follow us at our Facebook page, our Twitter at CPU Podcast, our Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite, or subscribe to the blog, our YouTube channel, our Apple iTunes channel, our Stitcher Radio channel, or find us on Google Play and on Spotify. In the meantime, if you don't hear your show in this podcast format, fellow panelists and I still write reviews and we always seek new panelists, so if you have any interest in joining the discussion, say hello by finding us at any of those outlets I've mentioned. At the very least, stop by and leave us a thumbs up, comment, or review. We like feedback, just don't sacrifice us to the Green Man, or to the Dark Lord, or to Lilith. Let's just leave sacrificing people with opinions you don't like off the table generally, okay? Today we're around the water cooler and talking about the first part of the second season, or is it the third season? Or is it the third part of a supernatural horror web television series produced entirely by Netflix? The show is The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, and we have expanded our two-part miniseries in which CPU catches up on this newish show and new spin on an old classic to include a third part, since the third part was released before we finished our catch-up series in the last. In this episode, part 3 of this miniseries, we're discussing Season 2, Part 1, otherwise known as Part 3, which was released to the Netflix streaming library on January 24th, 2020, with a total of 8 episodes, which means, for the record, that this content is available to Netflix subscribers exclusively, as it is Netflix-produced original content. We discussed Season 1, Part 1, and Season 1, Part 2 in the first 2 episodes of this now 3-episode mini-series. To remind the listener, The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina was developed by Roberto Aguirre Sacasa for Netflix, based on the Archie comic book series of the same name. The series is produced by Warner Brothers Television in association with Berlanti Productions and Archie Comics. Aguirre Sacasa and Greg Berlanti serve as executive producers alongside Sarah Schechter, John Goldwater, and Lee Toland Krieger. The series is centered on the Archie Comics character Sabrina Spellman, portrayed by Kiernan Shipka, and also stars Ross Lynch, Lucy Davis, Chance Perdomo, Michelle Gomez, Jazz Sinclair, Tati Gabrielle, Adeline Rudolph, Richard Coyle, and Miranda Otto. In this series, Sabrina Spellman must reconcile her dual nature as a half-witch, half-mortal, while fighting the evil forces that threaten her, her family, and the daylight world humans inhabit. Our panel of chilly witch wannabes, namely Kels, Selene, Jen, and Jessica, is back around the water cooler for part 3 of our newly 3-part catch-up mini-series to chat about the latest chilling adventures of Sabrina Spellman and company. Before we do, as always, I'm going to take a moment to take the panel's temperature. After all, as we all know, sometimes a TV show can take turns for the better or the worse in our heads, or can continue its level of awesomeness or lack thereof, depending upon its story evolution. As always, it should be noted that all of our panelists have watched all episodes of all available seasons of Chilly Sabrina to date, and may discuss sensitive plot points. So for those of you who have not watched any of this version of Sabrina, and plan to do so at some point, listen at your own risk, as there may be major spoilers. Welcome back, panel! How are you?
Good.
Are you excited to talk about this Season 2, Part 1, Season 3, Part 3, whatever you want to call it, segment?
Yes. Very much so.
All right. I feel the excitement. We are, of course, in quarantine and socially distant right now, so that excitement comes, staggered. But that's okay. So what I'm going to do, before we get started on our discussion today, I'm going to take your temperature along the standard CPU character question, which changes with each show we do. I did tweak this, and of course added a couple of characters, because the show added a couple of characters. It's not tweaked too much. But, and I did not record what you did in the last episodes, because maybe you remember, and I'm hoping that's the case, but if you don't, that's okay too. You're not totally married to anything. But how would you rate your interest in the chilling adventures of Sabrina, now that we've gotten past whatever we're calling what came out on January 24th, 2020? Sound good?
Yeah.
Sounds
good.
Do you love this show? It's your life. It may be too dark, even for you sometimes, but you also believe it has power in what it portrays, and so you're willing to confront those dark forces, even if doing so is ultimately bad for you in the end, and or even if you have to rely on untested and dangerous time magic to save yourself from being consumed by them. You certainly appreciate this dark telling for what it is, but the twists and turns also inspire your imagination, like Sabrina Spellman. You like this show, most parts of it anyway. You can handle whatever the show throws at you, though you also find some of the story pretty far out, even for someone as open-minded as yourself. Still, the focus on family and occasionally even the romances is what keeps you coming back most, like Ambrose Spellman. Do you watch this show because you're protective of Sabrina and the legacy of the Sabrina character? But your feelings about this latest chapter in her saga are decidedly torn. On the one hand, you admire this retelling and love the new portrayals of old characters, but on the other hand, you feel it might be too caught up in the dark forces, which muddles the story and sometimes even detracts from it, leaving you interested in the series' less dark story elements as the story progresses, like Zelda Spellman. Do you like this show because it stays true to itself, even if others see fit to overly criticize it or to toss it aside because it's different from what they're used to, like Theodore or Theo Putnam? Do you watch it because your best friend watches it? Though you're not shy about your opinions, which are decidedly mixed, yet you see its potential, even when others can't, like Roz Walker. Do you watch it because your family watches it, but the dark and sinister parts leave you feeling very uncomfortable, even when you can't help but embrace them at times, like Hilda Spellman? Has watching this show become complicated for you? You've lost interest in the Sabrina character, no matter how much nostalgia compels you to keep trying to love her, yet there are other parts of the show, aside from the main character, that intrigue you, and you can't help but continue to watch, like Harvey Kinkle. Do you love the dark and twisty atmosphere of the show, but you think the story is becoming too convoluted and sometimes offensive between Father Blackwood's attempt to unleash an eldritch horror, you honestly wish he was dead, and the rise of Sabrina Spellman as Queen of Hell, like Prudence Knight Blackwood? Did you try to enjoy watching this show, but it disappointed you, so you broke off your watching engagement? You find the main character rather self-involved and reckless, and even though the bad boy boyfriend on the show is attractive, you also can't help but think the darkness in the show overwhelms everything else in it, which drives you crazy, like Nicholas or Nick Scratch, sometimes Lucifer, Morningstar, aka Satan, aka the Devil, aka the Dark Lord, or Agatha the Weird Sister. Do you dislike this show but for the dark and twisty atmosphere? You can't be bothered about anything apart from your own vanity or pride and quest for vengeance for being exiled from the Church of Night, like Father Faustus Blackwood, or you can't help but hate the show. Though there is something winning about the Sabrina character, you serve one master and one master alone, yourself, and your aim to be the true queen of hell, and so your efforts in recommending the show are done with only those thoughts in mind, and or out of a feigned sense of loyalty to your dark lord, like Mary Wardwell, aka Lilith, aka Madam Satan.
I'm Kels.
Hi, Kels.
Hi. And I think that this season I am mostly Ambrose, and then a mix of somebody who's not on this list. Because I like the show, most parts of it, but I do find some of the elements of the story pretty far out for even my open mind. But the bits that I'm attracted to are not necessarily the focus on family and the romances, but it's more the dark, twisted stuff that I am intrigued by, and a little bit of the mythology, although some of that was a little bit far out for me. So,
welcome back, Kels.
thanks.
Hi, I'm Selene,
Hi, Selene.
and I'm a mix of three people in this one. I'm also Ambrose, mixed with Prudence mostly because the dark is what I love. So I'm Ambrose because I like most of the show, and even though it's far out, I love it. Yeah, also could kind of care less about the romances, except for one little bit, which we'll talk about way later. But I am mostly Prudence because I love the dark and twisty atmosphere of the show. But, way convoluted this season. Things got very, very, all mixed up. And as much as I loathe to say it, I'm a little bit Harvey Kinkle. Because for real, Sabrina is the least exciting part of this show for me. She literally drives me up a wall. But I love just about everything else about this show, despite how convoluted it is. But yeah, no, I'm Harvey and Ambrose and Prudence.
Fair enough. Welcome back, Selene.
Thanks.
That's Jessica.
Hi, Jessica.
So I'm kind of in the same boat as Selene right now, but I'm more Harvey because I'm over Sabrina. I'm just done. But I'm a little sprinkling of Ambrose because I do still love the show, even though it's far out. And I do love the darkness, so I guess the cherry on top of my sundae would be Prudence. So I didn't realize that till she said it, and I was like, wow, that's exactly how I feel, except I'm more Harvey.
All right. Welcome back, Jessica.
This is Jen.
Hi, Jen.
So I would say I'm a mix between Zelda and Harvey. So like everyone said for Harvey, I'm a little over Sabrina right now. It is pretty convoluted. But also, I consider myself Zelda because I still am protective of these characters. I grew up with the original Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and just seeing some of the parallels between them and then Riverdale, I was getting a little annoyed by, just because I know that they're technically in the same universe, but I didn't want them to be as cliche as Riverdale is. But otherwise, I still love the characters, and I want to see what Netflix does with the rest of the show.
Okay, welcome back, Jen. And of course, my name is Kylie. I participate as well as moderate this panel, which is often the case. I do not remember what I was last time. I'm sure I've never been a Sabrina. I
don't think anyone has on here.
I think there has been in the past, but certainly not now. I think I would be squarely Harvey Kinkle. While Sabrina never irked me as much as she did in the past, or maybe she irked me more than others, I don't know. She really annoys me now. I am going to rant about that character probably several times, and she's got the title character, and before I was along for the ride, and now I'm starting to not suspend my disbelief very well, and that's never good for my love for a show. And I also think I would be a little bit Prudence, because I like Richard Coyle as Father Blackwood, but now I feel like since they've exiled him from the church, he's become a B villain, maybe even a C villain, and they're really trying to come up with something for him to do. And I suppose if what he's unleashing is Cthulhu or something, it could be interesting. But they got a lot to deal with. So I'm kind of on the side of Prudence where I just want him to die. And that's how I feel. And that's where we all feel. So This is the third part of our three-part miniseries. Originally it was going to be 2, but I wanted to get our Riverdale series out first because, as Jen alluded to, they're in the same universe. We're kind of piggybacking these panels. Jessica is on the Riverdale panel. She's our lone crossover of the two. If for some reason they ever do a crossover on these shows, which I actually think would be amazing, we'll cross over the panels. But now we're here. There's been an extra part of a season that's been released. We're going to talk about it. So I'm going to start with the basic question and we'll go from there. What did you think of these 8 episodes, whatever we're calling this part? What did you like? What didn't you like? Start wherever you want.
I have a lot of feelings.
Which
there were
are?
parts that I really well, there were parts that I really liked, but we kind of touched on this on the last panel I was on. I kind of feel like things are just thrown together really fast. And there were times where I kind of forgot what was going on. Because I was like, wait, didn't we resolve this? Or when did this pop up? Or things like that. And I kind of got a little frustrated with that. The biggest thing was bouncing between the trials and hell and like the other stuff going on at the, oh my gosh.
The carnival.
The school and the carnival. Like just all of that. And so it was just kind of like a Mod Podge. There was parts that I really, really loved. Anything with Ambrose and Prudence, to be honest, they're just goals. And then there were parts that I kind of hated. And that's a broad overview, but that's where I'm at right now.
I mean, I definitely agree with the entire everything being thrown together way really fast. Like, I thought they did a lot better in the first 2 parts of the show in spacing stuff out and kind of like having a more cohesive story. I definitely thought so much was just happening all at once, and it was very confusing and sometimes hard to follow. I'll definitely agree with that.
Yeah, it's almost like they had 2 seasons worth of material that they were layering on top of each other, I think. That they really didn't need to, and it was like they chose to. On top of that, I felt like the way they went with the finale, which we can get to later, but I also felt like they pulled a huge Deus Ex Machina with that they really didn't need to pull. And it was like, why did you make this choice? Why did you, they deliberately wrote themselves into that so that they could pull that card, and then, it was intentional. It wasn't even like, oh, we backed ourselves into a corner and now how do we get ourselves out? It was fully intentional, and it was really weird, I thought. But I really liked a lot of the supporting characters that they added this season, and I liked a lot of the development, well, not all of the development, but a lot of the development for some of the other supporting characters that already existed, like Prudence and Ambrose. I love Aunt Hilda and Dr. C. Yes! Selene's gonna cry now. I love to hate Zelda. I didn't really feel like, I felt like they went a little weird with Theo's character also. And I don't know if that's just because for so long we didn't know what to make of Robin.
That didn't help.
But I felt like Theo was making such strong choices and was such a strong figure for the first 2 parts of the show. And then in this third part, it almost seemed like Theo felt really lost and didn't know what to do. And I was like, what the heck happened to you? Where are you right now?
In love.
Yeah, but not at first. You're right. That's what was frustrating. That's what was frustrating.
I think in general, just that entire, I don't know what else to call them, but maybe the mortals. The trio. Sabrina's friends. They had a lot of screen time, but I felt like a lot of their screen time was just waiting for Sabrina, and it didn't have a lot of good quality for them. There was not a lot of good character development. It was a lot of waiting, and
and then when they did take action, it was like, well, that was really stupid. Why'd you do that?
Yeah.
And usually when they do something, I'm like, oh, good for you. That was a smart idea. Yeah.
I think my problem with them was that prior to this, they've made a lot of actions on their own. They've taken control of their own futures. But in this part of the series, it seemed like a lot of it was them being coerced into doing things by other people. But it wasn't even coercion because they didn't know that they were being manipulated. It was all manipulation by people around them.
Well, and then by the time that they did need to act on stuff, they were relying too much on Sabrina and waiting for her when they could have done stuff themselves.
Yeah.
Well, I don't even know if they could have actually done stuff themselves that would have been productive, because at that point they were already so hooked into whatever corners they were in. Like, I don't know what they could have done to actually fight against the Green Man in the first part before time got fixed again, because they were already at such a disadvantage.
Yeah. I have a lot of beef with the everything.
Everything.
Sorry, not with everything, but like, first of all, they've already kind of like mixed Satanism and some of the pagan elements in this show to begin with. And then now they're introducing pagans as another thing, which I guess is fine, but then they're introducing them as this like violent thing, which is really out of character for pagans and really like frustrated me. And then like I was like, well, I guess it could be dark magic. Okay, like we can go there. And I guess in the end they're all gods and they're chaotic gods, so all right, I'll bite. But then it was like, then all of a sudden Zelda's calling on Hecate, and I'm like, I'm sorry, what is happening? Like, are you Satanist or not? Like, will you pick a side?
Well, so I will respond to that. I'm not saying this is good, because I'm going to preface my remarks by saying that the first two parts, I'm always a little bit of the outlier, it seems, and I think up until this part, the rest of you have liked the show a little bit more than I have. Fair?
Fair.
So, in the previous two parts, when we were watching, I was engaged 100%. Like, even if I didn't like everything I was watching, I still focused on it. It was still intriguing enough that whether I liked it or I didn't like it, I was interested to know what came next.
Yeah.
Okay.
The way this season started, I was not able to stay focused, at least for the first 4 episodes. And part of that has to do with the fact that, now to respond to Kels's point, the Coven starts the season as they've basically lost their compass needle. They've ousted Father Blackwood. He's no longer the head of the Coven. Zelda thinks she's going to head the Coven to save the rest of them. But they know they've imprisoned Satan or Lucifer in the flesh Acheron that is Nick Scratch. They know that he does not bear them well because all he wants is Sabrina. So in the end, they're scrambling. They're really looking for something else. And the other thing I want to say is that even though they have infused pagan elements, and even though they kind of introduced the pagans that we understand to be pagans separately, I do think that was a little bit of an assumption that was made because on the part of the Coven, because we find out that the constituent members, like you said, are demigods and gods. Not any of them are really worshiping of anything other than a very, very old god that made them gods. So I don't think they're actually the pagans. I just think that's what Zelda assumed they were based upon how they approached him in the wood during the Hare Moon episode. And that Hecate is actually the actual pagan goddess. And that's why she got introduced, because of that whole dream sequence where they were in the limbo. Zelda and Hilda, and Edward was leading them as their Maktet or whatever it is. That's what she was supposed to learn, is that you've been following all the wrong people up until this point. You should be following the triple goddess or the maid mother crone, that kind of thing. It was not told very well. It was not executed very well. But I think that's what they were going for.
Well, and I do believe, I think that they said that they were pagans. I think they introduced themselves that way.
Yeah.
But under as a disguise.
Right.
But like the other thing is like that modern day pagans do worship the Green Man, who is not a violent god that have to sacrifice things to, and that's also frustrating.
In all fairness, there are like satanic temples that also do not do any of the stuff.
No, I know.
In this show, so like it's not like they're just demonizing one form of.
Oh no, I know. It's altogether frustrating, I guess. And like
they actually equal opportunity have pot shot at just about every religion that they've covered on the show. So
Sorry.
Yeah, pretty much. That's true.
glorified some aspect, basically taken the things that people might assume about these different modes of faith and glorified it and sensationalized it for this story.
I would just like to mention that I was very upset that they talk about Hecate and then don't mention Selene. I could care less about Nick. I'm really mad that they don't mention Selene.
To be fair, Hecate was in the last episode, and there's a whole other part coming, so they may just.
That's fair. I'm waiting. I'm literally waiting.
If you don't want them to, they'll probably ruin it.
Fair. Just saying that when they mention the 3 goddesses, they could throw the other 2 names in there as well.
That's if you give them credit.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But going back to what you mentioned in the beginning, like talking about that very first episode of this season, I have to agree with you, Kylie. Like, the first 4 episodes, Kels kept being like, let's watch Sabrina. We need to watch it. And I was like, I'm not quite in the mood. What episode was it where I literally said, we have to shut this off? I'm just too...
It was like episode 3.
Yeah, like so much was going on, and I was just having a stressful day because God knows we're in a pandemic. And I was just like, I cannot today. I cannot handle this show. It is giving me an anxiety attack, and I don't even know what was going on. It was just too much of something, and I was like,
Sabrina was
nope.
being Sabrina.
Right?
Yep.
I don't like Sabrina either, for the
You
record.
never have, quite frankly.
No. Yes, that is correct. I never have. So that's why I didn't mention it in the beginning, like everyone else did. But I've come to this, like, slight epiphany about her charter, and it's not really a good one.
Oh, okay. So it's just
But my
fueling your
thoughts
validation.
No, well, my thoughts are, she's a 16-year-old girl with all of this power and privilege. And, like, if I was a 16-year-old girl with all that power and privilege, would I be making the same decisions she's making? That's where I've started to, like, go in my brain whenever she starts to annoy me. Because the thought that it really annoyed me that, like, right after they put Nick in hell, her very first thing, I think this was last season, but her very first thing was like, who wants to break my boyfriend out of hell? And I was like, are you kidding me? What is wrong with you? But then I was like, yeah, maybe that would be what I would say too. I don't know. I don't know where she's coming from.
So, to the extent that I give Sabrina any pass in this show, it's because we found out that Lucifer is her father. His primary cardinal sin is the one of pride and vanity, the deadliest of sins. And so the fact that she engages in pride and vanity, which is basically what you're talking about,
right,
that I'm able to follow along with her overestimation of her own abilities. I do find it very annoying, to piggyback on what you just said, that she became all about this boy this season. And then it didn't even last. And there was some sort of, I think they were trying to create some sort of greater dialogue where Nick was trying to point out that she's self-involved and doesn't seem to understand what he's going through. But then I also was like, of course you sacrificed yourself and now she's broken you out, so what is it that you want? To go back and be the flesh Acheron? Or for her, I mean, it was just that melodrama was so ridiculously sappy and it didn't fit.
Yeah, well, and then they, like, reversed it and they had Prudence be like, well, did he ever thank you? And you, like, do you really want to get back in that relationship because he never did anything for you and you're always giving to him and he never gave anything to you? And then it's like, and then on that point, she's kind of right too. And so then it's like, well, yes, so you're both terribly self-involved people. That's what we're learning.
And why is Sabrina listening to Prudence all of a sudden now anyway? Just because she's with Ambrose?
That's what she ended up saying to her, was like, why am I taking relationship advice from you? Yeah. But then I was like, well, he's actually in a better relationship than you are, so
that's true.
Maybe you should. But yeah, I don't know why.
Sabrina's impulses, though, I think, to go back to what you said earlier, which several of you said earlier about the supporting characters, I think that some of the supporting characters did have some interesting storylines. The problem is, though, that, like, if you're talking about the humans, including Roz, she's got the cunning, but if you're talking about the mortals, as Selene said, all of their storylines serviced Sabrina. They have the Fright Gang or whatever they are, which is basically...
Oh, yeah, they did have a name.
Yeah, it did. Roz had a T-shirt in the part finale, Fright Gang,
Right.
something. Anyway, basically the Scoobies from Buffy is what I was equating them to. But everything they did was in service to Sabrina and her whims. And she literally was the one to think of all the ideas and make all the impulsive, reckless decisions. And I was like, why is she the genius here? Why is nobody else capable of coming up with ideas to solve their own problems? It was ridiculous.
Yeah, and it was worse this season than it has been.
Yeah, way worse. Like, everything was a direct result of, I think everything was a direct result from her, because the pagans wouldn't have showed up if she hadn't dethroned her dad in the first place.
Well,
I have to agree with Nick this season that Sabrina was, at times unintentionally, but very selfish. Like, it was all what would benefit and gain for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like Theo and Roz and Harvey, like the episode when they went to hell, she didn't ask them if they wanted to go. She was like, okay, wipe this dead person water on you, wear these dead people's shoes, and let's go.
Right.
Oh my gosh, and can we talk about how quickly she was just like, yeah, sure, I'll be queen of hell, whatever. Anyways, bye. Like, that's not how it works. And then, like, they just let her get away with, yeah, okay, I guess that's how it works now. Like, everyone was okay with her just going back to the mortal realm and just being there instead of being like, no, you have to stay here and be queen of hell. Like,
Well,
I feel like that's a series in general where she, like, tries to have this, like, somewhat normal, like, mortal life, and then, like, she has, like, obviously has commitments as being a witch where she has to commit to, and they just, like, put up with her trying to do both, even though she can't really do both.
Right.
agreed, but in terms of the hell piece of it, I think that's why, again, this was not executed very well, because Caliban appears on the scene. This apparent golem of clay that is walking and talking and looks like the guy on a romance novel cover, and comes in and says, I challenge you to your throne, because apparently that's how it works. And of course he would challenge her to the throne because she essentially abdicated it as soon as she had it. What I will give credit to is Michelle Gomez's depiction of both characters, but particularly Lilith. She's got all of her judgmental looks, so I feel like if this is standard film school stuff, her judgmental looks are foreshadowing to other things that are probably going to come out in the second half, because she clearly did not approve of most of Sabrina's decisions, and I think they're probably going to come back around to haunt her. At least I'm hoping that's where they go, but thankfully they still have her on the show. And now she's playing both women, so that's fun.
I also feel like Lilith did really good at trying to, like, suppress Sabrina's mortal side. Because, like, when she came back from getting the bowl of Pontius Pilate, I can't remember exactly what was being said or being done. But she was, like, in her, I guess, human feelings, quote unquote. And Lilith was like, I don't care. We got what we needed. Let's go.
Yeah.
Because she had left Caliban behind and she felt bad about that.
Mm-hmm.
And Lilith was like, no, he lost. Get over it.
Right.
And he would have done the same.
He did do the
Exactly.
same in the first one. He cheated in the first one when he got King Herod's crown. And in the third one, the first time.
And then tried to make her feel bad when she didn't cheat by accusing her of cheating, and then she thought she did. So, like,
I liked him, by the way. I'm just throwing that out there.
Really?
I liked him as a character. Yeah, I did. I liked to not like him,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
It does, because I don't have any warm and fuzzy feelings. I know they were trying to set him up as kind of a suitor, and I just didn't feel it.
that felt like a trick to me. Like, they wanted you to think that was going to happen, because obviously that's what Nick assumed was happening. And, like, I think it was just I think that was a really good long game ploy for him as, like, a backup insurance to make sure he didn't lose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We'll see. He hasn't died in the alternate reality because he's in the stone. So we don't know if he'll come back or not, but
I have a prediction that Lucifer's going to use him to get back at getting Sabrina out of that throne. But that's just me.
how so? Just in the love manipulation realm?
I don't know how.
Okay.
I haven't thought that through yet. I just, like, I have a feeling like that's just, I think Lilith is going to realize, oh, this isn't the one and only Sabrina, something's going on here. And then her and Lucifer are going to somehow conspire, and then they're going to be like, let's bring back Caliban. Like, I think they're just going to use him as a third person to help try. I think they're going to use him as an expendable pawn to try and get rid of her.
Or her unborn child that she's carrying that they talked about for literally 5 minutes and didn't bring up again.
Well,
Yeah.
They didn't have much time left.
True. That's very true, too.
They brought up the pregnancy twice. That came up again in
Okay.
the finale, where Lilith actually told Sabrina that she could expect a brother. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
there was the conversation between the two of them, and then they had a conversation again in hell when she was talking about claiming the crown. And
I'm
Lucifer
really glad that they didn't show Lilith and Father Blackwood getting it on.
Oh, thank God.
Thank you for cutting that scene.
especially
Someone
since he
did-
was
did
asleep.
good work.
I mean, just saying.
He wasn't asleep.
No. Lucifer was
Lucifer
asleep
was
when
asleep.
she split them, and then she still, like,
Oh.
Blackwood was split at that point, so.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. The camera cut away. I guess the plan was sex. Okay, got it. I'm all right with it. Fine. I was going to say, so back to the supporting characters, also talking about Roz, Harvey, and Theo. Roz and Harvey, we have sort of the mellow... Oh, to go back to the point that I wanted to make earlier, the reason why I think they felt so much in service to Sabrina, not only because she's bossy and came up with all the ideas, but also because 2 out of 3 of them at first were earmarked to be potential virgin sacrifices to the Green Man.
Mhm.
So we had to follow their potential sexcapades, and that was like the crux of their whole stories. So,
It's also so cliche and really annoyed me as like a device. Like, I don't know. It's just it's an annoying writing device to me.
the sacrificing of the virgins or the dopey love triangles?
Both. Both, actually. But like as if there is not enough like pressure on teen virgins. Like let's put that in a story that teenagers are probably watching. And
Mhm.
I don't know. That's just how I pictured it. And especially especially queer teens, I think. That was frustrating.
That was super frustrating at first when we found out that Robin was one of the... I feel weird calling them pagans in a
You could
derogatory
call them
way.
carnival
Like,
workers.
You could call them parties. Yeah.
Yeah, the carnies.
That's worse.
all right, one of the pagans. So, like, when we found out that Robin was one of the pagans, and you're like, oh no, like, this is literally, you're using our poor little Gaby's heart.
But only at first, Robin has a sincere love for Theo. And
But you didn't know that for sure for a long time, because
Yeah.
obviously it takes a long time to get trust, and then you're even like, well, are we really trusting you, or are you just still playing the long game of, I'm pretending that I'm turning to your side so you'll trust me?
Well, when I learned his name was Robin Goodfellow, I was like, oh, who knows? It could go either way. So we'll just find out. We'll be along for the ride, and I hope Theo doesn't get hurt. I thought, again, sort of in the progress of depicting a trans character, though, this relationship is quite something. Again, on a teen show and on Netflix, but
Yeah, I really did love the way that they did portray all of the fact that it was never at one point, like, what word am I looking for? It was never at any point, like, derogatorily done or even, like, done as a joke. It was very sincere in everything they did, which I did really enjoy that.
I even like how Robin took Theo's coming out when he finally was like, I haven't always been Theo. And he was like, okay, but that's who you are now, and that's who you'll always be. So, and I think that was really needed in media because, you know, so many kids are afraid to come out as whatever they are, no matter what their demographic is in the LGBTQ plus community. So I thought that was really great.
I also thought it was interesting that they went with a same-sex relationship
Mm-hmm.
for Theo. because that's a complication that people who are afraid aren't really willing to aren't really willing to confront, and I was happy to see that representation was there.
I also like that Aunt Zelda is apparently bisexual. I was here for it.
Same.
My only thing was, where the hell did that come from? Was my
Thank
reaction.
you. Thank you, Kylie. I agree with you. We've had a little over this. We've had a fight about it.
To be fair, I can't remember which one it was in, if it was in part 1 or part 2, when they were having the orgy in the attic, and Sabrina walked in really confused because Ambrose was hooking up with Prudence, but then also hooking up with Nick, and they were like, well, we don't really have sexualities, like, we just love. So maybe that's why it was never really discussed what Aunt Zelda's preferences were before now.
I'm not even talking about preferences. I'm talking about, I saw nothing between her and Mambo Marie. They seemed, they had an affinity, there was an understanding, there was a respect. I didn't get a spark of romance off of any of those conversations. And then they were just kissing all of a sudden. So
Agreed. I don't know. I think they had a certain amount of sexual tension when they were not on the same page to begin with.
Selene, I do not think that you are an unbiased observer. So
I also... Listen, I would have been a biased observer, and I did not see any of that.
That's what I'm saying.
I have lived in the fan fiction world where everything is sexual tension. I mean, like, I will admit that I didn't actively think before that kiss, ooh, they would make a really great couple. But when, like, literally, like, I would say that entire scene, I was like, okay. I don't know. I felt... I'm gonna
compare and contrast. When Theo saw Robin for the first time, I was like, oh, they're gonna be romantic. It's going to happen.
Yep.
When Zelda met Mambo Marie for the first time, I had no such thing.
Fair. Yeah. Not even like the trope of like, I hate you, I don't like you, but like, yeah, it wasn't even like a Benedict and Beatrice situation. This was a straight up, I don't like her, she's a Catholic. No. It was never that she didn't like her to begin with. At first she was like, oh no, that's actually a good idea when she first showed up and they were talking. And then it was once she found out she was a Catholic, well, I don't even say that she found out she was a Catholic. She found out that she wasn't a Satanist. That she was like, how dare you? But still, I'm just saying. But then the entire talk about the Metet happened, and about, like, well, can't we just... I don't know, that entire Metet talk was a regular talk.
Correct.
Go back and rewatch that.
They've known each other for a few hours. It was very sterile conversation about religious beliefs.
I think what happened was you watched that kiss, and then reprogrammed the entire episode.
Revisionist history.
It's possible. It is possible. But until I go back and rewatch it, I can't tell you. And you'll never rewatch it because you hated the whole season. I did not hate the whole season. I hated it enough to not rewatch it. Yeah, we'll see. I hated all of... you know what I did hate? I did hate Aunt Hilda becoming a Spider-Woman.
That was so creepy.
I hated it because I hate spiders. And the whole time I was like, oh, nope.
I thought it would have been interesting, so now to go back to the self-proclaimed pagans, I thought it would have been interesting if they had developed Pan more, who was going by Sarkosa or whatever his name was, because that's fairly interesting, and Pan gets depicted in all kinds of different ways, and he definitely could have had a context that was more than what he was in this season.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
But they focused entirely too much on Cersei, and then on, I guess her name is Nagaina, but she's basically Medusa. She's the very same stuff that
the other Gorgon sisters.
Oh, she is?
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, I saw this. Let me pull up just make sure I have the wording right. Because I was rereading the Chilling Adventures comic and just like looking through like Wikipedia about it, and
all I know is what I watched from Clash of the Titans and some Greek books like the Odyssey.
Nagaina is also the name of one of the snakes in Rikki Tikki Tavi. Fun fact.
I'll have to trust you on that.
I did really enjoy the Clash of the Titans reference when he was like, no, wait, I got this, Roz. I've seen Clash of the Titans. I laughed so hard.
I was like, thank you for acknowledging what I'm already thinking. So.
Oh, so in the comics, Nagina, or however you pronounce it,
yeah.
she was actually Ambrose's familiar in the comics.
Oh.
So that's where they got the name from, probably, as like a tie for that.
That would have been more interesting. Why did they change it? Anyway, they focused entirely too much on those two and their machinations, and they didn't really spend a lot of time on
And all they gave Pan was that his stare drives people mad. Like,
yeah. And he played his flute a little, and that was about it.
Well, and I think it would have been so much more interesting to, like, focus on the pagans, because we find out, like, Robin Goodfellow's been with them for a while. He's, an orphan? And we have no idea of what happens with them before now. Like, the way that all of that happens, it's, Sabrina becomes Queen of Hell, and then the next thing we see is the carnival.
Well,
as if that's a direct result, which made me think that they'd been trapped and gone forever and a day. Like, that this was the first time they've been out of whatever limbo area they'd been in. That's how I thought it was up for so long, until we got to Robin talking about how they just kept going from place to place. And, like,
the other characters had been
normal carnival people up until now, or were they always, like, going to town, killing people, trying to get the Green Man to pollinate, and it just was never happening?
I think it was the latter, number one. I think they were actually trying to search for some sort of magical nexus to do their seeding thing and make that happen where everybody is sacrificed or becomes part of the Green Man Network or whatever we're calling it. But also, before Sabrina officially took the throne of hell, but after Lucifer was unseated, they were already telling Lilith that there was an off-balance between heaven, earth, and hell. And they were various people were warning other characters that the old ones were coming. So I think this is what they meant. They just did not connect that very well. There was just so many plot threads that were not connected. There was the they tried to in the end, but it started off as Queen of Hell versus normal high school life versus the Church of Night trying to rebrand versus the pagans coming versus all of the individual romantic relationships and how they fit together. There was just a lot going on.
Yeah. That, and then the entire restructuring of hell. Like, how do you think you're going to restructure hell in a feasible way? Like,
I don't know.
What do you even make hell into? A mini heaven?
I think she just didn't want contracts anymore.
I mean,
I don't even think she had a plan. I think that was just... I think she wanted power. I think that was...
Politician.
Yeah, she's a politician, basically. She wanted the power and none of the responsibility until it was forced on her, or until she could create a doppelganger through some tricky time stuff.
Can I nerd out about the Riverdale references?
You can. Please do, because I did not write them down.
So, in the first episode, when Prudence was glamored, that is Cheryl Blossom's mom from Riverdale.
Yep.
And then when Aunt Hilda is a spider, she wants a burger from Pop's Chocolate Shop over in Riverdale.
Sure does.
And a guy wearing a Southside Serpent jacket walks in. And I just was so happy.
They're trying. I don't know how they're going to make it happen, but they're trying.
I still have a really strong theory, and I may sound crazy for this, so I apologize to everyone.
I think it could be crazier than the show.
I think it's Glendale, right?
Greendale.
Sorry. I think Greendale is stuck in a time loop, because just from the kids' fashion, you never see, a cell phone or anything like that. I just feel like they're stuck in a time loop, which makes sense with Riverdale because nobody ever goes to Greendale. I have my own hypotheses.
Well, and then I remember in season 2, Roz had to call Sabrina about some sort of warning, I think, where the witch hunters, and they use a landline phone. They don't.
One I think was the rotary too. I think one of them was an old school rotary phone.
Yeah.
So I really feel like Greendale may be stuck in some time loop of some sort, and I may just be crazy. I may just be overtheorizing things, but that's where I am at.
Actually, that's a pretty prevalent theory on the interwebs for the people who follow both shows, because like you said, nobody in Riverdale wants to go to Greendale, and then we never see Riverdale from Greendale's perspective. They just talk about going. But then again, there's a lot of stuff in Riverdale that doesn't break out of its time constraint. Pop's Chocolate Shop is definitely a throwback, even if they are modern. The characters are modern and they're carrying cell phones. They still have this old style 50s train car malt shop in the middle of a small town with the most murder. But that's for our Riverdale panel, which Jessica is on, and which we already do. And we've covered the first 3 seasons. Please listen to those episodes wherever you find your podcasts. Tweet at CPU Podcast and tell us what you think.
But no, I really enjoyed... I just love when Aunt Hilda gets to do, like, not Aunt Hilda things. Because, like, you always see her as this, like, sweet aunt who never does anything. But then she makes the voodoo doll.
Yes.
And this is her... I believe this is the second one she's made. Because she made one last season. And she just contort bends the heck out of that lady. And that's not what you expect from dear Aunt Hilda, who makes pies and cakes and wants to share love. Like...
Speaking of that, can we talk about her duet with
I loved it.
Oh, that was adorable.
Todd, and how much I really want to see them in the path of Sweeney Todd now.
Yes.
I would love it.
Well,
That was
her.
that was the one. I'm gonna say that was the one musical moment I could actually stand this season.
Well, that's a brilliant segue to a question. So I had to ask this question. Now this is commonplace for Riverdale. They've been singing since season 1. The characters randomly break out in a song, or they do musical episodes, whole musical episodes. Now, apparently, Chili Sabrina is taking on the mantle of Archie Comics adaptations, injecting modern musical moments. So I've listed them. I did the research. So we have the cheerleaders, because of course Sabrina and Roz decide to become Baxter High cheerleaders for reasons that they did Ravenettes.
Oh,
For the reasons,
already busy enough.
I know, right?
Right.
For reasons they don't explain. I guess cheerleaders are okay, and they do renditions of "It's Tricky" by Run DMC and "Mickey" by Tony Basil. The trio of Harvey, Roz, and Theo form a garage band for some unknown reason that I don't understand.
Which they also apparently have time for.
Right.
I like that one.
And they sing My Sharona by the Knack and Teenage Dirtbag by Wheatus. And they try to recruit Sabrina, but she never thankfully joins. The Coven has 2 Broadway musical references. So they, Under the Light of the Hair Moon, they sing the Song of Purple Summer from Spring Awakening, and they sing Tender Shepherd in the finale from Peter Pan, of all things. And then, of course, the aforementioned By the Sea from Sweeney Todd, by Hilda and Dr. C. So what did we think of the injection of musical performance? Now it's not just random soundtrack music, it's people singing.
I thought they did a very good job. The Coven did very good jobs with both of their songs. And I love the Song of Purple Summer. And at first that was very much like, what? I mean, I will admit, I was very confused as to why they were singing a new musical as a part of a ritual, a tradition that they've apparently had for years. But I wasn't complaining because I thought they did a very good job. And I love that song. It is one of my favorites. So wasn't mad. My wife's over here shaking her head at me like,
You complain
with you.
the whole thing.
you know what? Hindsight is just rose-tinted glasses, apparently.
The whole thing that they had all those men, and yet there wasn't enough of a face blend in that sound.
There wasn't. There was not enough. But I still enjoyed it. In the theater of my mind, looking back, I really enjoyed it, but I could have hated it. I don't know. But I'll let you enjoy it.
I like Riverdale's music better than Sabrina's, if I'm being honest. I just felt like it doesn't fit with the show as much. What cheerleading group performs full songs while cheering? Glee. And apparently the Riverdale Vixens do too, but that's on the Riverdale podcast.
Riverdale established that for moment 1, though.
Right.
Sabrina has not.
And, like, I don't know, I agree with you guys that it's kind of weird that we don't have time for anything, but let's be cheerleaders and let's have a garage band.
And you know, It's
It just-
Tricky. It's Tricky is one of my old school jams, but I'm sorry. That was the most suburban rendition of It's Tricky I've ever heard in my whole life. And why did she get the lead? Why is Sabrina singing the lead in the cheerleader? She's just joined. They have a captain.
And she's never there. She's never at practices. They're always like, where's Sabrina? Oh, where's Sabrina? And she's always off doing something. So, great question.
I will say, though, I visually...
That's the first time you knew all the words?
We watch the subtitles, and I don't know half the words to those songs, and I've learned them. Well, I haven't learned them. I just know now that I've been singing them wrong. But I was going to say, there is a point or a reason for Sabrina and Roz to join the cheerleading squad, and it's so that she's got a coven that she can suck all the energy out of later.
But that was later. She didn't know that was going to happen.
Yeah, also, that was a weird plot twist.
I did not like that Roz was also getting her energy sucked. I just assumed that Roz was going to help lure them there. I didn't realize Roz was also kind of being sacrificed.
She's oddly okay with it afterwards.
Right.
She's like, okay.
Right. That
Did
bothered
she
me.
know, though, what was going to happen?
She did. Because she told her. Didn't Sabrina say something along the lines of, like, where can we get a group of girls with all this energy?
And Roz
Why she
suggested
needs
them.
the energy? She just said, where can we get a group of girls with energy?
Sabrina did not need to be part of the squad to get this girl group energy, but I also don't understand why Roz wanted to be a cheerleader. She seems a little...
Maybe because Harvey was a basketball player,
You're reading.
honestly.
I don't
Harvey and Theo.
Yeah.
I don't understand why everyone's all of a sudden friends with that dude that was...
Billy?
Yeah, with Billy. Why are we friends with Billy all of a sudden?
I don't get the sense that Theo is friends with Billy, because when they start to pick on Robin and Theo stands up to Billy and his friends, he basically, when Robin asks about him, Theo's response is, well, they're all right. They're getting better. It doesn't sound like they were friends, that there's just more of a mutual understanding.
Yeah, but it's still really apologetic. Like, Theo's still really, like...
Maybe Theo still has a complex over the time that he accidentally broke Billy's leg.
Maybe. It's
Theo
still
is
really
very
tolerant.
sensitive.
It's still really tolerant. But, like, Roz...
I don't understand.
What is
She's
she
a cheerleader, though, now. Cheerleaders have to be friends with everyone.
I don't understand why she had to be a cheerleader. I was not along for that ride. Of all the people, Roz seemed very library-oriented. She was sorting out her cutting. Like, where in the first two parts did we have this girl who suddenly needs to be a cheerleader for no apparent reason? She's not a Buffy... She's not a Buffy Summers, and she's not even a Cordelia Chase, so I don't understand.
With the songs, I think the only one that fit was Dr. C and Aunt Hilda.
Yeah.
I will say, I love Song of Purple Summer too. One of my favorite ones from Spring Awakening. I didn't quite understand why it was there, but visually, beautiful.
That entire scene was just visually stunning. I
It was
loved the
amazing.
outfits, all of it was fantastic, especially then when you eventually bring in the pagans and just like the contrast between them was so great. There were a lot of visually stunning moments in this season.
Mm-hmm.
They really upped their aesthetic game. Although I do remember having a conversation, where the hell did they all get this very gothic wallpaper in Greendale? Because I don't know anybody who has wallpaper like any of them, and they all have it.
If they're in the time
Because they're stuck in a time loop.
that could be evidence.
I want an Eldritch egg.
I don't.
I don't.
So cute.
You want Cthulhu out in the loose someday eventually?
I
Because that
don't
will
know.
be on you.
I don't understand why an Eldritch egg has time swimmy properties. I don't understand how Father
And when
Blackwood...
the egg has properties, and then all of a sudden the water the egg is in has properties.
Yeah, we need more information on that egg. Because when he first showed up, when Prudence and Ambrose first showed up in Scotland after Mambo Marie gave them that tip, he was calling up what you thought was the Loch Ness Monster, but was really some sort of a guy in a squid mask, and producing this egg. And for some reason, Judas and Judith are teenagers. But the egg, was the egg there first, or did the sea monster bring the egg? And how did they get to be teenagers, and where was he suspended in time? There was just no development all of a sudden on this.
I have a theory on that.
Okay.
My theory is that entire area was in a time loop type, or not a time loop, but in a time warp situation because of that egg at the bottom of the water. I have a theory that egg is in its own little time world because I think that's the only way that egg would have survived from back when the old gods existed. Like, if that is let's say, the oldest gods, the eldritch gods' last attempt to make sure that they don't die out. Like, let's say that they're dying and they know whatever's coming is going to get them. Then the best spot to lay one of your eggs or any thought of a future would be in a spot that isn't its own little time warped thing. So my theory is that egg was affecting the entire area and that it took Father Blackwood that long to convince that guardian man in a squid mask, whatever, to bring it to him. Because he spent that long trying to prove himself.
And now, spoiler, and we can kind of go towards the finale because we've definitely talked through a lot of the season. The egg has hatched. This was Father Blackwood's last stroke. He's in the final moments of the season. The egg hatches, and this whatever it is, again, I'm assuming it's Cthulhu, but whatever it is...
He called it the Void.
What?
Didn't he call it the Void?
No, that was just one of his gods that he was worshipping at the time in that
Gotcha.
world.
Yeah, I don't know that the void was in the egg. I think he thinks the thing in the egg will open the world he's in up to the void, is kind of how I took it. But whatever it is, does that mean that the time, now that it's hatched, that the time magic no longer works?
I don't know. Circling back for like 2 seconds, how come when the egg was in the fish tank, the water had time magic properties? When the egg was in the bottom of the lake, that whole lake didn't have time magic properties. Or did it?
My assumption is that it had a lot longer for its time warp energy to expand out, whereas it was only in that fish tank for like days, maybe a week. I don't know. I have a hard time figuring out how long time is going in this show.
Well, if Selene's theory holds true, I would presume, that there's some sort of expansion issue with it. Okay. And there was an artificial boundary on the fish tank. There was no artificial boundary on the lake.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Briefly talking about that, the very beginning of the show is all about finding Father Blackwood and all that jazz. And then we find Judith and Judas, and then they get put in a dollhouse, and we barely visit them until the end, and suddenly they're back with Father Blackwood. Like, that seemed like a whole storyline that just got dropped into no man's land.
Yeah.
Agreed, but they had so much going on, how could they possibly juggle it?
Right, but still, just another one of those swept under the rug.
Well, let's talk about this.
I got really confused for a second, and it may be just because I'm me, but when Sabrina went back in time to do everything, how did Father Blackwood find out where Judas and Judith were?
Agreed.
Because he didn't find out until he killed Prudence.
That's a very good question.
So I'm really confused.
I guess my only other thought is that he just kept looking for them and then figured out, oh, there's some magic radiating from the dollhouse spell. Because he had the house all to himself for however long they left him there. Also seems like something Prudence wouldn't have, neglected to remember to bring with her, but hey.
It was just, that was a weird moment for me. I feel like it was kind of this an unanswered, you kind of weren't supposed to question it.
I agree.
Moment.
I agree with you, Jess. I think that's basically how they presented it, but I have an alternate theory. Okay. Agatha and Prudence are connected. Agatha, for some reason, I guess never was cured of her insanity and kept following Father Blackwood and was there at the altar when the egg hatched. So maybe Father Blackwood was able to get it out of Agatha, who would have known because of her connection to Prudence as a weird sister.
Yeah,
but then how did Dorcas still end up dying, I guess, was the other thing. Did I just miss that? Or...
Agatha killed her.
Okay, so Agatha did still end up killing her.
Because Sabrina's selfish enough to not help Prudence's timeline.
I don't know that Sabrina knew about
Probably not.
that at
I
all.
don't think so.
If she did, though, do you think she would have?
No.
No, because she would have been too self-absorbed in her own problems and how to fix her own things and not everyone else's. Because, hi, I'm Sabrina, the world revolves around me.
To be fair, a lot of the stuff was also affecting her family, and she did focus on that in the finale, too. But Dorcas and Agatha and Prudence, I mean, they've traditionally been at least frenemies, if not worse, so I don't see her expanding her goodwill to them.
I agree.
But someone we did forget to mention that I really loved, though, all of the hedge witches who are badass, awesome women.
Mm-hmm.
Get it.
I did really like that scene where they gave Sabrina their powers.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that scene was really kind of cool because, like, they were saying their things and then the power would come when she said their names.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of really enjoyed that scene.
Yeah. I wish, once again, they'd have had more time to explore more of the hedge witches because they were all just magnificent women, and I would love to know a lot more of their stories. And so my sister, I randomly was watching the last 2 episodes with us and had no idea what was going on any whatsoever and kept being like, who's the pioneer-looking one? And I had no name for her, and I'm very sad because I was like, yeah, who is that one? Do we know her name? Who is she?
She did not.
And I would just really have liked to spend, once again, a little bit more time on them because I think they were all awesome.
I did like that Batty Bat came back for a minute.
Yeah. Actually, I had to look her back up because I was like, who is this character? Because it's been
She
so
was
long
in the
since I watched
contraption
the season.
We might get to see more of the hedge witches, though, because I think Zelda's invited them into the coven in return for helping, and also they were in the circle that called Hecate. So
Yeah.
I think we'll
I'm
get to
excited
learn
about
more.
that.
Yeah, that's probably in part 2, part 4, whatever part.
Whatever they're numbering it.
But
I
let's.
don't know why I didn't think that the egg was probably Cthulhu, and I was just like, it's a T-Rex. That was me.
Dinosaurs are real.
I really wanted it to be a T-Rex, and I wanted it to just eat him right away.
If they introduce dinosaurs on this show, I quit.
That's more than fair, I think.
I would not be along for that ride.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the series finale because it was jam-packed and it was one of those situations, series finale, season part finale, whatever it is. It started off very non sequitur because you jump in where Sabrina is essentially, Sabrina from the future is talking to the Sabrina that has been trapped in place of Judas Iscariot. Where the hell he went, haha, I don't know. Because clearly Caliban had to get him out of his rock to trick her into getting her into his rock. So where is Judas Iscariot, number 1? I think that's going to be important. Number 2, she shows up saying, I'm you from the future, and you've got to do this, and you've got to go back in time, and this is how you do it. And then it just spiraled out from there into one of those... I mean, it's actually kind of tropey for sci-fi fantasy to do this time sort of juggling episode, but it was really weird that it landed here and that it was so complex. So what did you think of it?
To be honest, I didn't really like the finale because I felt like with how it ended that it shouldn't have been the finale for one. Like, it felt like there could have been more to come. I mean, and there will be because there'll be another season, but like, it just kind of felt, here, have this. It's mediocre at best, but here you go. And I think Sabrina splitting herself in two is just going to come back and bite everyone in the butt.
Well, yeah,
That's
of course.
an obvious trajectory, I think. I was disturbed that her Queen of Hell looked like Queen Elizabeth I.
Yeah.
When Queen Elizabeth I was like the awesome queen, everybody's like, was she the awesome queen? She's the one who never married and was like the powerful person. Okay.
I was going through, it doesn't matter. Also, why would that be, like, I'm very curious as to why that's the choice. Like, of all of the outfits in all of the world, like, why that one?
I feel like they're going for something, but I was too distracted by the fact that, aside from these gold spiky things, they went almost for a carbon copy of one of the famous portraits. The dresses of one of the famous portraits of Queen Elizabeth I.
I did appreciate that the ribbing on her corset, though, was actual ribs. Did appreciate that little detail. But, so that episode started, and I literally went, this is the most Deus Ex Machina, like, anything that I've ever seen. Like, it was just so out of, I don't know, it's just the trope, you're right, like, so tropey. The tropiest of tropes. The entire, the fact that they started off with the legend of Sabrina, like...
Yeah, that was where did this voiceover narration come from, and why did we need it?
Yeah, and I mean, I guess honestly, if they were going to do what they did, they should have spent more time in a world without everybody to make us feel any emotional attachment to it. Like, because just the way that it was, and the fact that it started off with the time loop and being like, this is what has already happened, all this bad stuff has happened, you have to go fix it. It almost ruined any of the, like, consequences. Like, it felt like the entire rest of this episode was consequenceless, because there's no way she could have gone back in time to give herself this restart if it hadn't already ended okay. And I almost would have rather have been fooled into believing that somehow, like, the timeline hadn't already, like, isn't going to be reset, and feel the consequences of everybody but Ambrose being dead. Like, I'd rather have that emotional, traumatic journey than just be like, well, somehow it's all going to get fixed anyway.
Yeah, I agree. That episode really was so convoluted, a little bit too layered, that you really didn't have time to experience emotion if you wanted to anyway. Mm-hmm. And then with Sabrina kind of being the captain of the ship and making, again, rather reckless and rash decisions. I mean, I think if they're trying to develop sort of a genetics, sort of the nature versus nurture argument, where she is Satan's child, but then also raised in a loving home and cares about her family and wants to live both aspects of her life, I don't feel like they've convinced me to care about either half. And nothing good can come of her being Queen of Hell, quite honestly, so I don't really know where that's going to go. But I do feel like they're walking into something that's even more dizzying and confusing in the second half than where this first half started. Everybody agrees.
It just left not the greatest taste in my mouth.
I'm almost wondering if they're trying to pull somewhat from what they did in the last episode of season... What was the last episode we watched of Altered Carbon?
1.
Okay, season 1. You're right. Where he does the entire, like, splitting into 2 people. And I wonder if they're trying to make stakes in a very poorly done way of, like, eventually one of them's going to have to survive, and we're going to have to feel like, oh, emotionally, do we care which one survives? Like, they're going to spend all this this next season with 2 different Sabrinas, and then they're going to, in the very last episode, force us to be like, only one can continue.
Maybe.
And I feel like I'm going to be like, get rid of them both.
I was going to say.
Yeah, we don't need both.
We don't need Sabrina to be in Sabrina anymore. It'll thrive without her.
Yeah.
Well, her name is a title.
The Adventures of Ambrose.
I would watch that so fast.
Okay, can we briefly discuss the fact that Ambrose is always like, but I can use this and use its magical properties to do something, and then always manages to somehow backfire on him. Like, dude, maybe you should just stop trying to keep things.
Oh, yeah, that's true. He's slightly frustrating in that aspect as well.
Such an academic.
Yeah.
But his character is set up that way. Remember, he's kind of the...
Yeah.
I don't remember what he was trying to overthrow, but he did something very bad and was sentenced to house arrest. That's how we met him. So
He tried to kill or assassinate, it was either the anti-pope,
oh, right.
or like the actual Catholic Pope, or like something that would like expose them.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
It was both.
So every time he starts acting like the brain, where he wants to take over the world, or a little Voldemort-ish, if you want to go a different direction, it doesn't actually surprise me. Like, Ambrose, I feel, is probably the most consistent character of all the characters we see, at least in terms of the fact that he's the most open-minded, the least observant of boundaries, because he never really has been. He just doesn't care about anything.
Also appreciate the fact that he always has an answer, but doesn't think about it until you say something to him. Oh, you need to know where this unholy regalia is? I might know where it is, but I've never thought to, do anything with this information until you need it. Like,
Well,
what you hiding in that brain of yours, Ambrose?
Zelda also
Like
made
Ambrose.
him the Academy Librarian out of the blue, so clearly there are unexplored depths.
I just love
I
Ambrose.
also think the unholy regalia is a huge plot hole because, I know supposedly nobody knows where some of those things are, but I do not believe for 1 second that Lucifer wouldn't have gone through anything he could have to get rid of those 3 things so that nobody could challenge him for the throne.
Well, that, and then in the last episode, you know, they have to go through and find the Judas's silver,
Yeah.
and he goes, oh, but you can just go ask Judas. And I'm like, am I to believe that you didn't do this yourself, Lucifer? Like, you've just been sitting on this and haven't sent every single one of your minions to try and figure this out beforehand? Like,
Right.
And what about the detail that Dracula, aka Vlad the Impaler, is Judas Iscariot's son? That was an interesting thing they dropped, which I wish they could have developed more. Because that's certainly different.
Didn't they just steal that from the role-playing game of Vampire?
I don't know, but I do know it's in the Librarian and the Judas Chalice.
I want to play this role-playing game.
Mythology.
I need to play this role-playing game. And the Librarian, are you talking about the TV show?
Yeah, with Noah Weil?
Yeah.
No, not like the original like TV movies, not the new one.
Oh.
But yeah. It's the 3rd movie. I have it. I don't have the first 2, but I have that one.
I see.
Santa Caddick's in it, so that's why I bought it.
Oh, Selene, you have simple and consistent motivations.
If you can hear me shaking my head.
Oh, we forgot to mention that Selene and Kels are married, so #dynamics.
Oh, yeah. That's probably been mentioned on previous podcasts. But.
Yes, but we like to remind the people. Hillary's got her own disclaimer, and it's #Hillary disclaimer. Because she always is appearing with Kyle and myself, so you know. So, Selene mentioned some predictions. Do any of the rest of you have some predictions for the coming segment? We're going to call it a segment, because nobody can decide what it is.
I think we're going to see some more of Edward Spellman.
As the Moctet, or as himself? Because he was the Moctet.
I'm thinking as himself. Because at least, like, based in the comics, he does come back from hell. I won't say how, depending on if... Because I don't want to spoil it for people, but he does come back. Whether or not people know that it'll be him or not will be a different question, but I'm thinking we haven't seen the last of him.
What a tease. And she's Queen of Hell, so there could very well be an intersection there.
I predict that Sabrina will get more annoying.
You predict that every time.
Well, so far
Every
she's been
time
right.
she has been right.
I predict that Sabrina will lose the throne of hell. I don't know how, but I'm sure she will.
I agree with that prediction, and it's either going to be because the boy is born and, you know, sexism, or it's going to be because basically the world's going to start imploding because there's 2 of her.
Yeah.
That's not supposed to happen, even in hell/earth/heaven.
Yeah, 2 antichrists at the same time.
Ooh.
Is she the is that what we're going with?
No, that's basically what she is. That's what she is.
I
Like,
mean,
they don't refer it to her as that, but, like...
She's Damien, I get it.
I mean, she did go through all of the reverse, or the, what is it, the
circles of hell?
The reverse miracles.
But the
reverse
like
miracles.
the anti-miracles or whatever. She is Lucifer's daughter, and through whatever verbiage they use, through immaculate conception / not really, but sort of. However,
Rosemary's Baby.
Rosemary's Baby.
So yeah, that's a fair point. 2 damn, can't have 1. Now we got 2.
I'm
It's
gonna
going to be
piggyback.
double the annoyance.
God, no. But I'm going to piggyback off you guys, and I do think that she'll be overthrown by the baby because sexism. And then I do think that I don't know if they'll be forced to, like, merge again. I mean, I think that'll be the end point of it all. But I think, like, things are going to start to happen to both Sabrinas to cause, like, alarm that something's not up. Like, be it fainting spells or, I don't know, some weird thing like limbs falling off. Not that extreme, but that's the only place my brain will go right now. But just kind of like the missing pieces kind of thing. Like, things aren't going to add up and it'll be more noticeable. And I really just want more Ambrose time, if I'm to be completely honest.
I want him and Prudence to make up, but I don't know if they will.
I hope they do, because they're my OTP of the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
Well, Hilda and Dr. Sue are my OTP,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
They're my one step below OTP is Prudence and Ambrose.
Your second place OTP.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a confession. I'm old and I don't know what that acronym means.
One true pairing.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm with Hilda and Dr. C in this regard. They're my
Yeah.
favorite couple on the show. I see potential with Theo and Robin if they keep Robin on the show, but I'm more interested. I have a soft spot for Hilda because she's clearly the mousy, bullied one, except for that burble of darkness and anger that spouts out of her every now and again. And I like that she might have a life independent of her sister, which I think will be interesting, and it's something they can develop since, spoiler, he clearly survives being attacked by her Spider-Woman self and comes back out of the cocoon of webbing, I guess, that she made for him. So I'm interesting to see. Another prediction I have is that we'll see a wedding in the next segment, and it will be theirs.
I kind of want Sabrina to stay single, too. As much as part of me thinks something might happen with Caliban. That's his name, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Part of my brain wanted to say Calcifer, but that's from Howl's Moving Castle, and that is not this at all. But part of me feels like they might push that relationship. But I really think she just needs to be single and fix herself.
She needs to love herself more. You're right. Maybe she'd be 12% less annoying.
That's pretty gracious there. I would say maybe 5% less annoying.
12% is my default percent. It's flexible. So,
there we go.
any other predictions, or how would you say, there's been 3 segments. Where does this segment rank for you compared to the previous 2 segments?
Least favorite.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. I don't know if I said this already, and stop me if I have. I don't often go for the second screen experience. I'm usually focusing on TV, particularly when I'm moderating. I could not help but second screen the first half of this season, and I don't do that very often. So it was a little frustrating for me because I'm not normally motivated to do that.
I just thought it was so inconsistent in so much of it. Like, just there was far too much. That's the problem. They needed to either lose some stuff or like just not do so much of it at once. Elongate the series or the season part, section, whatever you want to call it. They just needed to cool their heels and not burn the world down all at once, even though that's exactly what they were trying to do.
The pagan storyline could have been a whole season unto itself.
Agreed.
And they could have paralleled Zelda trying to reorder the Church of Night against Father Blackwood's vengeance quest, because that would have been a natural dovetail. And they didn't even need Lucifer this season. They could have figured out how to eject him from Nick earlier, or later, I mean, and done that separately, or up against the pagans.
I definitely feel like that separation happened real fast.
Real fast
Right.
and very unsatisfyingly, because that was kind of an interesting high moment on the last season segment, and the fact that they went so quickly to undoing what they had done in the finale of the previous segment also left a bad taste in my mouth. I hate when shows do that. Like, they set up so much great potential, and then they squander it by wanting to go to some other storyline and forgetting that they planted this pretty fertile seed that could have given us so much more story all on its own.
There was a season 7 of Supernatural.
Yeah! The pagans are Leviathan! / Nick are Leviathan. Stupid Leviathan.
I mean, it would have made a lot of sense to end season, or part 1, season 2, as they did, with saying we're going to get, my boyfriend back, and then ending the next part with them getting him back, rather than being like, oh, it's just a stepping stone in our ladder of falling down a pit of who knows what.
Yeah, this segment was
we're
very
just
messy.
not doing that yet.
Well, that's what I meant. Ending a season or a section on that, rather than doing it in, what was it, the first episode? Second episode?
Yeah, but I just meant, like, they could even wait a season before they did that. Like, let something else happen that stops them completely from being able to do it.
And I mean, she kept going back to hell, so she could have kept seeing Nick anyway.
Exactly.
Like-
They didn't have to write him off the show. They can keep paying him.
Well, he's not
People
written off the
left
show,
the
he's
show.
just lonely and consoling Prudence. Oh, you mean if they had changed this reality and done something different?
Yeah,
I'm caught up.
he still had Lucifer in him.
Yeah, this season segment was just incredibly messy, and it was very, very hard to stay focused on it, and I'm pretty good at that, so I really think it's their problem.
It was really interesting, too, the interweaving they did of, I say interesting in slightly a derogatory way, because they could have done it so much better. Like, first off, all of the literature references with mythology, with religion, with everything, it was just so, like, what are you actually going for? Like, if you want to introduce a lot of literature beings as actual, like, mythology, could you explain it a little bit rather than just being like, oh, Robin Goodfellow, who is a Shakespearean character, along with Caliban, and why are they here, and why are their names relevant? Are they actually, like, could someone just say, maybe
I was going to say,
Lucifer
to be
had a pact
fair,
with Shakespeare?
to be fair, Robin Goodfellow was a character before Shakespeare appropriated him for Puck. Shakespeare does not have an original idea in any of his plays. You know that, right?
I mean, probably, but that doesn't mean that I know all what they are.
I enjoy Shakespeare. He just wrote the poetry. He didn't come up with the stories. So, yeah, no, I completely agree. There was very little story development and a lot of expectation of suspension of disbelief for elements that they literally just dropped into the story without giving any seed or any forethought to. And that was very frustrating. I've used the word frustrating a few times. I think that sums up my feeling on the season.
I think that's the hashtag for this episode.
Hashtag frustrating! We'll have to come up with a drinking hashtag, but I don't know if frustration has enough longevity under it to be a drinking game.
Mine was hashtag Ugh Sabrina.
Ugh, Sabrina. That's shorter. Sure. Is there anything else that you want to say or talk about that we haven't already talked about regarding this season segment or what you hope to see in the next one? Selene.
Just briefly want to interject and be like, when the heck did Miss Wardwell become convicted enough to murder someone?
Oh,
Because
we haven't talked about that yet.
Well, no, I get it. I get that the devil was like, they're witches and Adam's actually dead and this is the devil, but like, that's quite a leap still to being like, all right, I'm going to go murder them.
Well, let's just hope. There's plenty of opportunity, since none of those characters are gone, for them to develop the possibility of why Ms. Wardwell was Lilith's chosen virgin on Earth, even though part of it was to ingratiate herself to Sabrina. I think there's a predisposition to Ms. Wardwell that they just haven't developed because she hasn't been a character of her own since we've met her. And so I think that's something they can play with. I'm hopeful that we'll see that. But if this season is any indication, I don't know that they will. So we'll have to see. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I was not offended by that leap because there was enough in her story that set up her, because she literally spends the first half of this segment trying to understand where she had been and why everything had changed around her. She still hasn't figured out, or she still hadn't figured out until Lilith showed up at her door, that she was replaced by somebody else who lived her life.
Mm-hmm.
And that also might have driven her crazy because she went to go do her shooting after Lilith showed up.
That's fair. And in a lot of stories, when you see your doppelganger, you are driven insane. So that does make... Okay, thank you. I needed that connection point.
The fact that they're not spelling this out is a problem, and the fact that we have to theorize, well, based on the math we see here and our knowledge of other sci-fi, fantasy, and horror shows, this is what we think is probably happening. But, you know, at least with that one, there's something you can extrapolate from a little bit better.
Okay, no, I think I've covered everything now.
Well, good. So now I have to ask the important end of episode questions. First of all, are you going to keep watching?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's because I'm on the panel.
So now if you're saying it that way, I have to add the disclaimer, are you watching it because you want to or because you have to?
Mostly because I want to.
Okay.
But I think if I wasn't on the podcast, I wouldn't be as apt to watch it as soon as I'm going to.
Fair enough. Jen said yes. Celine said yes. Kels
said yes.
I said yes. I said yes more excitedly than Selene did.
You did.
Oh, okay.
I would binge watch this show. You're the one who doesn't want to watch it.
Hashtag called out, hashtag dynamics.
I watch with rose-tinted glasses and like things a lot better after I finished them.
I see. The in-watching experience, you have the judgments, but after it's done, everything's fine.
Yeah.
I see. So we're all going to keep watching, mostly because we want to. I mean, I think if I still want to keep watching. I don't feel like I have to just because I'm moderating. I want to see where this goes, but I'm not going to promise that I'm going to like it. Next question. At the end, as of where we are on this program now, at the end of this season segment, would you recommend this show to others? Why or why not? Remember, it's a podcast. You have to provide a reason.
I would recommend it to a specific, certain amount of people. Like anybody who's really into dark things and or witch-related things or creepy things or anything that is weaves in a lot of mythology or religion. And I would say the first 2 seasons did a pretty good job of inverting a lot of things, whereas this last season was just a mess. I'd still recommend it because I think it has a lot of potential if you get rid of certain aspects of things.
I would not currently recommend this show to anyone because I am waiting to see where the next part of it goes. So I was recommending it before, but if anyone was asking me for recommendations right now, I would hold off on recommending this one until I know where it goes.
I was a no at first, but the more I thought about it, I would recommend it to the people, like Selene said, that I know would enjoy it because it's up their alley, be it if they like the dark shows, the shows about witches, what have you. But I would tell them to take it with a grain of salt and buckle down for the rough parts, basically this last season that we're just talking about. But I would tell them to take it with a grain of salt. But I wouldn't recommend it to just anybody. They would have to be somebody that I knew enjoys this kind of thing.
Selene pretty much summarized my answer. I would recommend it, but just to specific people that like that genre. Maybe some fans of Riverdale, just because of all the crossover potential. But if they have a really queasy stomach or don't really like all the scary stuff, then it would not be for them.
I would only recommend it to people who are already fans of Riverdale. Quite honestly, the 2 shows are starting to mirror a little bit for me. Riverdale also had probably a stronger first and second season and a very weak third season. And there's a lot of patterns that are following the same sort of trajectory, where the third season got incredibly messy and had a lot of storylines in Riverdale, and now we see sort of the same thing going on with Sabrina. In fact, when people have asked me about Riverdale, because Riverdale is probably more watched than Sabrina based upon my research and metrics, what I typically tell them is I don't know if I can recommend Riverdale unless you really like sort of dark and twisty new takes on what is essentially bubblegum comic books. However, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is in the same universe, and I think that show is better. I like Sabrina better than Riverdale, but I think the people that will appreciate both shows are the same people. I think it's unique enough and very much centered in the same sort of dark, twisty, teenage drama place that regardless of whether there's witches or not, you're going to enjoy both shows or you're not going to enjoy both shows. I do not know anybody who falls in the middle that one's okay. It's one of those guilty pleasure type things for me where I admit that I watch it because I do the podcast and people requested it. At least with Riverdale, certainly. Sabrina is more up my alley just by the history of my own preferences in TV watching. But it's so similar in a lot of ways that I'm just kind of already putting the 2 of them in my head, whether they ever cross over or not. Anything else that we haven't already said about The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Season 2, Part 1, Part 3, Season 3? Well, if there's nothing else you can see to say, and there's nothing else that I can possibly do, what I'd like to do at this time is thank Jessica, Jen, Selene, and Kels for joining me to talk about The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, Segment 3. And because we've talked about Segment 3, it's time to roll the chilling credits. Couch Potatoes Unite! Was produced by Back Pocket Productions, run by yours truly, the Chief Couch Potato, which is really another way of saying executively produced by me, Kylie Piette. My associate producers are Krista Pennington and Selene Rezmer. I edit this podcast, and our logo is by Rebecca Wallace. Our marketing graphic artist is Krista. Our theme song was written by Sarah Milbratz and sung by Sarah, Amy McDaniel, and Kelsey Rezmer. Kelsey played the keyboard, Ian McDonough played the bass, Christian Somerville played the guitar, and the whole kit and caboodle was engineered and produced by Kyle Aspinall and Christian. We hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. Please, if you like what you hear, take the time to rate us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Google Play, or wherever you find your podcasts. Give us stars, give us comments, give us reviews. Let us know how we're doing. Send us a message. We might just read it on the podcast. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, what we should keep, what we should toss. You know how it goes. And if you have suggestions on shows we might consider, contact us at our website, couchpotatoesunite.wordpress.com, where we have a guest book, via email at couchpotatoesunitepodcast@gmail.com, or via our social media, Facebook, Twitter at CPU Podcast, and Instagram at Couch Potatoes Unite. Though, of course, we add new and old shows to chat about around the water cooler all the time. We always have several more new episodes coming down the pike. Just listen to our intros, and if you miss old episodes or want to know in general what we cover, just find us. We are everywhere and searchable wherever you look for things on the internet. You can search for us, or you can subscribe at our website, our channels, our social media accounts. Stay up on our new events and episodes. Until the next time, all available seasons of The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina are available to stream on Netflix, as that's the network that made it. Not because they asked us to talk about them or anything. In the meantime, our Sabrina panel will next reconvene to talk Season 2, Part 2, or is it Part 4, or Season 4, whatever, the release date of which has not yet been announced. So until next time, until next episode, new episodes are published every Wednesday. Keep listening, keep watching, stay tuned!
Bye-bye.